Misprint Con is this amazing event where misprint collectors from all over the world come to this one place and hang out together for a few days and check out each other's stuff. For those of you who couldn't be there, here's another chance to look inside one of the binders that was there at the event. Actually, this might be two binders, but they belong to the same person, so it's all the same thing. A collection, or at least part of it. Here we go.
That's right.
The top row of this page has test prints. These are called 8th edition test prints. They were for creating the modern card frame. This isn't the final design that they ended up with, but it was something they worked on along the way. In the center row, the left card is a miscut that shows a filler card, which is pretty cool. Filler cards are really rare to begin with, and a miscut filler card is just kind of insane. The other two cards in the center row, those are make-readies. They don't look like a whole lot from this side, but on the other side they have Upside Down, an Unlimited Common, and an Antiquities Uncommon. This is basically from, make-readies are from setting up the press to print the sets. You know, like before you hit print and make 1,000,000 cards or whatever, you want to make sure things look good. So this is the slower run through where they check everything and make sure that the machine's working properly. These two particular ones, there's two sheets of these that were made like this that we know of. If there were more, we're pretty sure they didn't survive. So these two sheets, these two cards are from what we call the first sheet, which is the more desirable sheet. It's factory cut. The bottom left card there, that's a Beast of Burden, which is strangely miscut, and I think it's also missing the pre-release stamp. It's a little hard to see in this picture, but I have one of those also. The center card at the bottom is a miscut card, and it's unusual to have a card miscut side to side like this. That's the rarer style of miscut, and it's also unusual to have one that's so severe. It's pretty much right in the middle there. And then the bottom right card is probably what I think is one of the most impressive cards on this page. Those three dots, the circles there, that's actually scratch-off material, like on a lottery ticket. And this is a test print for a set that wasn't released called Unglued 2. And it was going to have some cards where you could, whenever you cast the spell, you would scratch it off to see what it did. It would have a slightly different effect. And so this was a test for that mechanic, just to see if it would work.
Yeah, all of these are from that same deck.
Nice.
This page has a lot of what we call shifted foils. The text layer is shifted in some direction off of where it should be, and often the right side border, the black border, is extra wide.
Nice. By the way, I also have a box for. I'm hoping I find someone who wants a box to use to contain a misprint deck.
Which box? Oh, it's a
pre-con. It's called Battle Surge.
Here's a couple more shifted foils and a test print there in the middle. The bottom card is a little hard to see in the still picture, but you'll see it in the video. That is a color error. The left portion of the card is very blue.
Interesting.
That would be in. Did you look through that?
Pretty sure these cards are Gata promo cards. That's a Japanese magazine. Something like The Duelist would be here in the US and in other places wherever The Duelist was distributed. But in Japan, they had Gata magazine. And these are promo cards from that magazine.
The deck text stuff that I Some of this is.
I think these are more Gata promo cards. On this page, the top row is Gata promo cards, and the bottom 2 rows, those 5 cards there, not the mountain, but the other 5 cards, those are Japanese Hobby Japan promo cards. During the promotional period, for every 9 boosters of 7th edition, Odyssey, or I think it was Torment, you could get 1 random card that they would send to you. And so it's pretty difficult to get these, even in Japan, and it's even more difficult to see them outside of Japan. To find them. So I'm pretty fond of those, especially that Ishin Shade down there at the bottom. But those are pretty nice cards.
No, I think it's in the box. Because I just kind of finished some of my elf decks. And
Oh, yeah.
Here's some basic lands where the black text layer is very faintly printed.
Yeah, the other rare from the deck was when it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Creatures of the chosen.
At the top here, we have some beast tokens that have the card name Worm. And on the right side, these Sarah Angels have printer hickeys in the casting costs. The red cards there are Portal 3 Kingdoms cards.
Type costs 2 less than casting. Yeah, that one went to the guy who got the deck for me.
This page has a center column that is miscut connectors. What's even cooler is on the back side, they're not miscut. They're just regular on the back. They're miscut only on the front. Now that's actually a printing error and not a cutting error, but it still looks pretty cool. So you could play these unsleeved and they wouldn't be marked cards.
I already got the Misprints. Oh yeah. But I don't really I'm not that interested in my suited deck, so I don't want to get I need to stay focused.
This page has color errors, either too much of a color or not enough of a color. In particular, that Phyrexian Walker there in the middle, that's called Dark Visions, which is a subset of visions that is known for having darker colors.
I feel like you have a and thus you could get more stuff out of it.
I think that's.
On this page, I wanted to point out that Sylvan Library, which has very faintly printed black to the point that the text is practically gone. It's pretty hard to read if you can read it at all.
My drawback here.
What's the drawback on that?
Each creature is to choose a creature type and return stuff from their graveyard.
This is what I was thinking of. Yeah.
Which I think is okay. What's the error?
On this page, there's some Feldegriffs that are signed by Richard Garfield. If you didn't know, Feldegriff, if you mix up the letters, you can spell Richard Garfield, and vice versa. I think it's Richard Garfield, PhD.
Square corners.
Oh, yeah.
This page contains Promo False Prophets. I believe that was a pre-release card. And they have stamping errors. You can kind of see there that the stamps aren't in the right spot, the date stamps. And that top right card is a Italian miracle worker with a blank back. So it's a misprint, and the back wasn't printed when that card was made for whatever reason.
I think the structure
micro.
Did you find it? Oh, good, I did. Well, I just bought that to take it.
This page has Homeland's Make-Readies. The other side of these cards will have upside-down cards on it.
I want to say that's Undo Giant, the Japanese one.
And here's some more Homeland's Make-Readies.
It's a
Like I
Wood
could
Elves that's slightly better Wood Elves, I think.
Like I could take out. I have Cultivate and Kodama's Reach in the cube. No.
Okay, new binder. This page has Fallen Empires cards. And they are commons, and they are printed on the back side of other commons and upside down. So both sides of the card have commons. It's like a regular card that has another sheet of commons printed upside down on the back. Each of these Fallen Empires cards in 2019 is pretty easily worth hundreds of dollars. If you had a really good card like Hem to Turok, it might hit 1,000 or more. Just to give you an idea of what these are worth. I don't usually discuss values because they change all the time, and in the future when people watch the video, it's going to be kind of irrelevant. But that's what they're worth at the moment. So there's a few pages of these. Check them out.
Actually, I don't think it's as good as Wood Elves. I think it's a bad Wood Elves.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't have Wood Elves in my power, but I have Cultivate and Kodama's Reach, so I could probably replace one of those with this. We'll see. I don't know what that would be though.
There's been blood, not a lot.
Okay, on this page, this is 5th edition Uncommons. Now these cards have both sides of the card printed on the same side of the card. So typically the backs are printed first, and so in this instance, this sheet of card backs would have been upside down in the stack when it was ran through the printing press. And the result is that the fronts, when they were printed on this particular sheet, the fronts were printed over the backs. As far as we know, there's only one sheet like this, and they're pretty hard to find. So that would make each of these a one-of-a-kind card in the world, assuming that the card only appeared on the sheet once, which we're not exactly sure about because uncut sheets of 5th edition are next to impossible to find. But the few pictures that I have seen, I don't recall seeing any card on the sheet more than once. I think there's a few more pages of these here.
It'd be fun to play.
It's from Homeland.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a lot.
I know. It was printed in the pawns pile.
Sourdough rounds was what you make pretty much set.
Pretty much set.
I need to sell stuff too, so I have non-misprint stuff, so I have money to buy all this stuff. I also have a Surface Pro 4 that I'd be willing to sell. Or if
That's
anybody
the
wants
one
it.
that
I think wants it.
I found 5 cards in it. Kevin has a small.
Oh, dude.
Oh, really?
There's.
All right, on this page, we have Fallen Empires again. Now these are common cards printed on top of uncommon cards. Also, very rare and expensive. There's at least 2 or 3 sheets of these, which is still an incredibly small quantity of cards in the world, but they're not unique.
There's what you put in.
Oh yeah,
That's probably
I also have a Wood Elves.
You know what I do? I take out Cultivate.
Wait, would you
Hands.
play this as a 3/3?
Oh, in my power cube, hell yeah.
Oh, geez, that's really good.
My miscut Hem to Turok that's cut basically just like this. It's 2 black mana, 2/2 changeling creature. That
So is the rule that if you have an instant or sorcery with the power covenant, is the rule that you play it as a
You
creature
have to play
with
it-
an ETB ability?
No,
Or instant or sorcery with an extra token?
So in my rule for Hem to Turok, you have to.
Okay, and here we have what's known as Wyvern Backs. Now, this is a different card game produced by a different company, but in the same print facility. And when this card game was being printed, they accidentally printed some magic fronts on the cards. Maybe it could have been done as a make-ready when they were setting up the press, like scrap sheet kind of an issue. That's probably likely, to be honest. But anyway, they were released inside the Wyvern starter decks, and people got them, and they only exist for Fallen Empire's commons. So if you want to collect any, don't expect to find any uncommons. But they're out there. These days, they're probably worth $100 or more each for the common, the junk cards. The more expensive ones can be worth significantly more.
Say that it's a sorcery, so you can only cast it when you could cast
On
a
the
sorcery.
stack, is it a sorcery?
Well, so that's what I was going to
Like,
ask.
could you counter it with counter-target sorceries?
Absolutely, you may.
Could you counter it with counter-target creatures, though?
No, because once it resolves, then it becomes a creature.
I
Now I'm fine.
Okay.
I'm fine if it's like I'm fine if we put stuff in. It's like that's way too powerful, and people are like, I should be able to counter it with either. Just like can't you counter enchantment creatures with either?
Because they're both.
Exactly. So if it gets to that point, then it's like
To make it a creature sorcery.
yeah. So we could create. That's probably not a bad idea.
Alright.
So creature sorcery. So you can counter it with
Kind of
anything.
like either, and then it becomes a creature.
Probably fine. Let's make this because I have my hymn to Turok that's cut. So a 3/3 wood elves, and look at this one. Like, because it's a 1/2 cube, my power cube.
Yeah.
So I think I'm gonna take out cultivate and put down the 3. And put
Yeah, I don't know any of those either. No. Oh, that was the coconut.
I think you're right. Like people being able to counter it as either.
That seems a little more fair.
Especially with stuff like this and the hymn to Turok.
Yeah.
Because of the hymn to Turok, I'll just play my all drop pack rats and it's just a rat, so it's really busted.
What else is there?
Just
Another new binder. This page shows Urza's Saga cards. And they don't look particularly unusual from this view, but when we turn the page, you'll notice that they all have upside-down backs. So pay attention to this side versus the other side when I turn the page. There's several pages of cards with upside-down backs in this binder, not all from Urza's Saga. If you notice, they have different expansion symbols. You might also notice that some of them appear to be miscut on the back side only. Now, what's actually happening there is that's an issue where the margins on the side of the sheet aren't the same width on the left side of the sheet and the right side of the sheet. So when you turn it upside down, it's kind of offset. It appears offset when you cut it. So for some sets, some expansion sets, because of that width difference on the sides of the sheet, if you turn the cards upside down on one side of the sheet, they'll never line up when you cut the cards. So that's what you're seeing here.
to have them just for the reference, just to know exactly what the pattern is for whatever.
Well, I don't know if the pattern's the same when you're done.
But what I'm saying is, if you have the front and then you've got the pattern, if it's a legit card that people are faking or something, and the light tests become hard to.
That's true. Yeah. Did you want that?
I mean, you might as well put it in there as a snake.
I think they were hurrying to get it out too. Everything was kind of rushed back then. That's cool.
I need one of these for the cube.
I've seen these, but I've never seen one like that. That's like a true albino bag.
Office just had the full circle.
Yeah.
That's really neat. And the front's just normal?
What are these originally?
The non-Misprint. Yeah, that's what I'm looking up. Let me check.
I mean, I just need one anyway for the power cube.
I've never seen anything like that. That's really cool.
There's also some cards from fourth albino.
Total albino bag? Okay.
There's 30,000 strong, which is not all the magic cards in the world. Some people don't realize. I want to put wing sharks back in my power cube too.
Ryan, I wouldn't have expected anything less from you. You don't need your rose.
I'll keep an eye out for those.
On this page, we have an interesting issue. You've probably heard of the blue layer inside cards. A lot of people think of it as a security feature. Its actual purpose is to prevent, or at least reduce, light from shining through cards so that your opponent can't see what cards you're holding if you have a bright light behind you. Like if you're sitting with a window to your back, you don't want your opponent to be able to see through your cards and tell what they are. Now that's not as big of an issue these days because we frequently play with opaque backed card sleeves, but originally the game wasn't played with card sleeves. So they were concerned and they wanted this colored layer in there to help prevent light from shining through. Now the color of the layer is there to prevent the light from shining through, but the layer itself has an additional purpose. It's what provides the bendability and sort of the stiffness of the card. It helps prevent creasing and things like that. So there's a lot that goes into making cardstock. Like, this isn't just thicker paper. It's designed to be durable, to be played with as a playing card. A lot of people refer to the blue layer as glue. It's not actually glue, it's a graphite laminate. But the idea is basically the same. It laminates the two halves together. So if you've ever wondered what that layer looks like, you've probably done a light test or something like that, where you shine a bright light through the card to sort of get a look at the blue layer. Well, in just a moment here, you'll be able to get a look at the blue layer without a bright light. So this is what happens when there's an error in the cardstock production, and the blue layer, for whatever reason, doesn't adhere the front and the back together. And it's pretty rare, but you'll get a card sometimes where the front half and the back half just fall apart because the lamination process there didn't work. So here we go, check it out.
Did you?
I use mine.
I also collect.
Oh, what Sharpie is it? Is it the double-ended one? No.
Those
Two
are all-
double-ended ones there, and there's
Those are all mine. I didn't use. I think. Someone's using it.
yeah, it's a
Oh,
It's not that one. Someone was using it.
I don't know if I know who
Sign
it is, though.
something.
Yeah.
It's still okay.
All right, one more new binder. This is a little one. So these Guru lands here are missing their expansion symbol stamp. It's normally a gold or bronze foil stamp there, and it is not there at all on any of these cards. Now, as far as we know, there are 11 copies of this island and 10 of each of the swamp and mountain. Now, that's a known to exist quantity, but it's likely at least 15 of each based on some sheet pictures that we found, if those sheet pictures are reliable. The other island there is a 4th edition island that's missing most of the black ink. Everything on this page is a test print. These are commonly called the German-French test prints. They are from just before German black border was printed. That would be German limited edition, also known as 3rd edition, FBB. It's the same card list as revised, but this is the first cards printed in German. Actually, these would be the very first cards printed in German as far as I know, because these were before the regular cards were printed in German. So these test prints were just before that. Most of the text is identical to the German cards, but one card is slightly edited, and all of the copyright lines are French on these cards, and that's where they get the German-French name. It's because all of the text is German except for the copyright line, which is in French. And the reason for that is because the German cards were translated from French instead of being translated from English. So the French cards were made before the German cards. And that's part of the reason why the German cards in the early days had such an issue with odd phrasing and things like that. That Ironroot Treefolk, for example, it had a different name, different card name in every different release in German, because they just had to keep fixing it. So another thing you might notice is that the casting costs don't match the card frames That's because each of these cards has text from a different card than the picture that you see. That Spell Blast on the right is a Pestilence. That Swamp in the top left is a giant spider. And that Ironroot Treefolk, I believe that is a Frozen Shade. This page is also test prints. This is a little more subtle. These are what are called M15 Test Prints. So when M15 came out, the cards had the new hollow foil oval down at the bottom on the rares and the mythics. So before they made that, they had to test the process and explore several different options of what they were going to do. And this is some of those options that they considered. So you can see on the bottom row, there's that M letter. That's a hollow foil stamped on there. That's kind of an orange color, similar to the mythic color. And on the top row, you can see there's an Innistrad symbol where the normal expansion symbol would be. So, one of the things they were considering was to just make the expansion symbol on the card be the hollow foil. And they could make the foil be different colors to code the rarity. But for whatever reason, that didn't work out, probably because they couldn't get enough detail in the stamp to make it really work well. And in the end, they settled on the oval that we all know. But this is, predates that. This is when they were exploring their options and trying to figure out what they wanted to do. By the way, these hollow foil stamps on the test prints are really interesting to look at under a microscope if you ever get the chance.
What are those ones?
There's
The test prints.
Oh.
the
Basic test print.
the newest ones that I'll say Forest Test Print.
It's just a miscut foil promo PS Cradle.
Did those come from?
This page has what is known as Richard Garfield event cards. So on the left here we have Splendid Genesis, a playset of Splendid Genesis, which is pretty amazing. So these cards were made to announce the birth of Richard's first child. Now, these cards are pretty rare. We think there's one sheet made which is 110 cards. They're pretty valuable. And they're also amazing in the play as written format. I know you probably didn't expect me to say that, but yeah, if you read the card, shuffle all cards in the game together and deal them into 3 decks. The game continues with a new player. So you could play that in the play as written format. It's probably a good idea that you have different sleeves on your decks, though. That way you can sort it out when the game's over. To the right here, we have Fraternal Exaltation, which is the birth announcement card for the second child. It was printed in a larger quantity, twice as many as what we think. So it would be 220 copies of that. And it's not very playable in play as written. It's just not practical because so many people live, or rather so many people play far away from their parents' homes. It just doesn't work very well.
Not the cradle, the
Yes.
The best one is the Ash Zealot. It says Wyvern on the name.
Oh, really?
That?
No.
Yeah, they all have the right name.
This page is Exodus Test Prints. You might recognize those from one of my previous videos. This is all 8 different Exodus Test Prints. 8 different cards, that is. There's a variety of different iterations or variations of these test prints. I believe these are the +1 versions, which has to do with the color saturation and how much foil shows through in between the color dots. These are test prints for when they were designing foil cards. And you can see that the Pygmy Hippo there from Visions doesn't have an expansion symbol, while all the other cards do. These particular ones have magic backs. These aren't like the ones that I have. And the next page also has more of these, but I think the next page is the -1 version, slightly different.
Except the Ash Zealot is Ash Zealot, but then it goes like WBRR-WBRR.
Oh, I did see that, yeah.
Yeah, it's just Ash Zealot, Wyvern.
So I treated him, I had the original art for the 6th edition City of Brass.
This video was geared towards people who are still fairly new to misprints, but who are interested in misprints. If you're completely new to misprints, I may have used some terminology in this video that you're not familiar with. Feel free to ask questions below, down in the comments section, and I will probably make a terminology video at some point in the future because the community could probably use one just to sort of solidify some differences between some terms. And if you're thoroughly experienced with misprints, you probably already knew this stuff, and you could identify the cards without me talking. That's about it for this video. Catch you next time.